In this video, we're going to be talking about sampling methods, which are different techniques that allow us to get a sample of people from a population and ask them a question or survey about information that we're interested in. So for example, let's say that your Algebra 2 class wants to know what percentage of people in the state of Maryland think that the high school day should start after 9 a.m. We have 4 different sampling methods to choose from, and for each one, we're going to discuss the key features and then pros and cons of each so that we can figure out which one would be best to use. First, let's make sure we know the difference between a population and a sample. A population is the entire group of people from which a sample is drawn. In other words, it's the entire group of people that we're interested in finding out this information for. So in this example, we're talking about people in the state of Maryland. That is the population that we're going to be taking our sample from. We're not going to be asking people outside of the state of Maryland about this question. We're only going to be asking people within this group. And this is the population of people we want to know this information about. The sample is the set of objects, or in this case, people, that are selected from a population. So the sample will be the people that we actually end up asking this question to within this population. So let's go ahead and start by talking about the method for a census. You've probably heard the word census before, as every few years the government mails out a census to people and asks certain questions about information they want to know about people in our country. So for a census, as you know, everybody in the country gets this in the mail and is asked to complete the census. So that should help you to remember that a census is a sampling technique where we ask everybody in the population this question. So in our example, we would be asking everybody in the state of Maryland if they think that the high school should start after 9 a.m. So every single person in Maryland would be asked this question. So the pro of this is that it is very representative of the population. By representative, we mean that by asking everybody, we're going to be getting representation from all of the different geographic areas in Maryland, people of many different backgrounds, different experiences. So we'll get a good representation of the population by asking everybody. It will also be the most accurate because we'll be collecting the most possible data about this question if we ask every single person. We'll just have the most data, so we'll have the most accurate answer. Now, the cons of this, you might already be thinking, is it's going to be very difficult to ask all 6 million people in the state of Maryland this question, especially from the perspective of this is your Algebra 2 class that wants to find out the answer to this question. That's going to be a lot of work to try and ask all 6 million people in Maryland. So while a census is representative of the population and it's pretty accurate, it's definitely one of the hardest to actually do because it's a lot of work to ask everybody in Maryland. So let's go ahead on to the voluntary response. Now, when you hear the word voluntary, it probably makes you think of the word volunteer, and that will help you to remember that a voluntary response survey is where people can choose to respond. So think about when you volunteer for something, you volunteer to contribute to something usually because you want to or you're interested in helping out. Voluntary response, that's exactly what it is. People can choose to respond. So for example, if you were to post a link to this survey on your social media and say, hey, if you're interested in answering a question about when high school should start, go ahead and click this link and fill out the survey. So the pro of this is it's less work for the people who are distributing the survey, because if you think about it, just posting a link and saying, hey, if you're interested, please respond. Once you post that link, then all you have to do is wait and see what people say. You really don't have to do any other work beyond that. You're just like putting it out there, letting people know if they want to do it, they can, they don't have to, and then you just wait and see what people say. The downside of this is it's not representative of the population, because when you think about volunteering, people are really only going to fill out the survey if they're interested in, if it catches their eye when they're scrolling through Facebook or whatever, or even if it's an email, like they're only going to take the time to respond if they're interested in expressing their opinion, which most likely means that they do have a strong opinion. So this is going to skew the data towards strong opinions. So we're not going to get as many people who might have, or might be unsure about what they think, we're not going to be getting responses from them. We're only going to be getting responses from people who really have a strong opinion, know what they want to say, and take the time to actually do the survey. So voluntary response, it's easy on us, but it's definitely not the best way to get a representative sample. A convenience sample, now the word convenience probably makes you think it's going to be also easy for us, and that's true. A convenience sample means you ask people who are easy to reach. An example of this would be, for example, if you stood in front of your local grocery store and asked everybody who walked through the door what they thought about this question. What do you think? Should high school start after 9 a.m.? If you stood there, you'd be getting a lot of responses from people who walk in the grocery store, but you'd only be getting people who live near you or in your community that are in your geographic location. You could also similarly post on social media a link to the sample and have everybody on your social media complete it. That would be easy for you to do, but it's not going to give you people outside of your own circle of friends or followers. So it is convenient for those distributing the survey, just like the voluntary response. The downside of this is, once again, it's not representative. It's probably just going to give you responses from a certain group, whether that's a geographical location, like if you're standing at a grocery store and you just get responses from people in your community, that's not going to be representative of the whole population of Maryland. And even if it's on social media, you're still only getting responses from people in the group that see your posts. So you're only getting responses from one group, which will also skew the data, much like the voluntary response. All right. Now we have one more method to look at, which is the simple random sample, or SRS for short. A simple random sample is when everyone in the population has an equal chance of being randomly selected. Now you might be wondering, how do we make sure that everybody has an equal chance? For example, if we're looking at the whole population of Maryland, let's say we had access to every social security number of any person that lived in Maryland. So if we have everyone's social security number, then we would be able to randomly select social security numbers, which we don't know who has each number. So everyone will have the same opportunity of being selected, and it won't be biased. We select, let's say, 100 social security numbers, and then we contact those people and get an answer from them. Another way you could do it is, let's say there's 6 million people in Maryland, you could number every person from 1 to 6 million and then randomly pick numbers within that range and then figure out which person has that number and then ask them the question. So the really important part of a simple random sample is it's random. You don't know who you're selecting when you're picking a number. You don't know who that number corresponds to, so it's random. And everyone has an equal chance. So it has to be a way for you to equally choose anybody in your population. So the pro of this is, it, much like the census, it is representative. If you are choosing social security numbers of everyone in Maryland, you're more likely to get people from different counties, different cities, different communities, different backgrounds, all different people that will represent the whole population well. So it's representative of the population. It's also more feasible than a census because you only still need to pick, let's say you want to pick 100 people. You're only going to need to call up 100 people and talk to them, as opposed to the census where you're supposed to ask everybody. So it's more feasible than the census while still representing the population well. The downside of this is it's never perfect because you still might not get a response from everybody that you select. So if you select 100 people and you can't get in contact with 10 of those people, you're going to have to end up picking 10 new people to get responses from. So in that case, whatever the reason is that made it difficult to contact those 10 people, that means they didn't really end up with an equal chance because you didn't actually get to ask them the question. So you might not get a response from every person selected. So as you can see, all of these methods do have pros and cons, And even though the simple random sample is the best way to do a sample, it's also not perfect because, like I said, you might not get a response from everybody. So overall, the simple random sample is the best way to get a truly representative sample from your population, and it's also more feasible than the census, which is the other method that is representative. On the other hand, of course, being that it depends on the situation you're in, if you're just in your Algebra 2 class and you want to know the answer to this question, a simple random sample is great if you have the time and the means to, access a number for each person and randomly choose them and then go ahead and take the time to contact them. That would be ideal. But of course, in your Algebra 2 class, you might not have time to do all of that. So it's okay if you do a voluntary response or convenience sample. You just have to be aware of how the data will likely be skewed based on the people who are actually responding to your survey. So these are all different ways to take samples. You just have to be aware of, first of all, try and do a simple random sample if you can. That is representative. A census is also representative. If your population is small enough that you can ask everyone, then a census is great. A voluntary response and convenience sample, they are the easiest for the person doing the survey, but they are not going to represent your population in the best way.